What's up, DFS players? Really interesting video. We are going to be going through some PrizePicks, NBA player props, and I also have a tennis pick. So today we gave out a few entries. This John Gray, this one hit, this one didn't hit, and this one came so close to hitting. We went 3 for 4. Jason Alexander over 2.5 strikeouts was a very good pick that we found on the OddsJam positive EV tool, which will show you mathematically profitable picks on PrizePicks. But unfortunately, the freaking Brewers take this guy out 4.2 innings deep, and he's only given up 1 earned run. So unfortunately, he ends the game with 2.5, so we don't cash either of the other ones. But regardless, we were on a heater before, so you know, can't win them all. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's go through the best player props for today that we can get into on PrizePicks in the NBA. So one thing you can do as a DFS player is compare PrizePicks to the sportsbooks and look for discrepancies, right? So for example, here we see that Derek White over 2 is where PrizePicks is setting their line at, right? The sportsbooks, the 2 sportsbooks who have posted odds for this, BetOnline, a very, very sharp sportsbook, and FanDuel are setting his line at 2.5. Right, so the jump from 2 to 2.5 is pretty big. So the question is it big enough for this player prop on PrizePicks to be profitable? That's one way you can think about using PrizePicks, comparing PrizePicks to the sportsbooks, looking for discrepancies and finding profitable picks. Another way is pretty easy, is just compare PrizePicks to sportsbooks on the OddsJam positive EV page. So right, we can see right here, PrizePicks has, you know, for this tennis game, Mackenzie Mcdonald, they're setting the total games market at over under, 23, right? That's where they're setting the line. However, sportsbooks are setting it at 22.5, and they have the under heavily juiced, right? The under 22.5 is minus 140 on DraftKings, minus 120 on FanDuel, and minus 134 on Pinnacle, the sharpest sportsbook in the world, right? So let's get into PrizePicks. Again, the way this platform works is any 2 picks you select, you're just going to be getting plus 200 odds. So it doesn't matter if you're taking the overs, the unders, your payout doesn't change, which makes this platform literally insane, right? This is a DFS player's dream. They're not changing payouts depending on if you pick the over or the under, right? In any 2 picks, you can select any 2 picks. Now, the reason this is fascinating is this is completely different than every sportsbook, right? Where, for example, if we wanted to go with, let's go to some example player props. If we wanted to go with Jason Tatum over 6.5 rebounds, this is heavily juiced on the sportsbooks. And the reason it's heavily juiced, right, is the sportsbooks believe Tatum's over is more likely to hit than his under. The total, or the rebounds total, right, should have a higher implied win probability for the over, right? So you, if anything, would want to include Tatum over 6.5 rebounds on PrizePicks. You definitely don't want to take his under. Why would you take his under at an implied price of minus 137 when you can go to DraftKings and get plus 120, right? It is critical to compare PrizePicks to the sportsbooks as you search for value. So anyways, the first pick I'm going to go with is Mackenzie Mcdonald tennis game under 23. So under 23. This is at 5:40 a.m. on Monday, so don't count me in to be watching it, but we can see it is a value play. The sharpest sportsbook in the world has this priced all the way down at minus 159, only 29 cents in market width, all the way down at minus 159, and we're able to get this at an implied price of minus 137 on PrizePicks. So we've gone through the math in other videos, but essentially because PrizePicks is giving you plus 200 odds, 20 to win 40 a profit, plus your $20 stake back, so 20 to win 60. It's actually 20 to win 40 in profit. You're just getting plus 200 odds on PrizePicks for any picks you select. So anyways, let's get into it. Let's go to tennis, and then we want to go to Mackenzie Mcdonald in total games. So Mackenzie Mcdonald, this is a guy. That's a guy. Mackenzie Mcdonald is a guy. Good to know. Under 23 total games, right? You want to take the under. The sharpest sportsbook is pricing this at minus 159. We can get it minus 137. This is a true pricing discrepancy. And again, we've gone through the math before, but given the odds that PrizePicks is giving you, plus 200 odds for any 2-pick entry, you have to be winning your picks over 57.74% of the time to break even on PrizePicks. So that's just to break even. So that was the one that hit from this morning, so that's cool. So we have Mcdonald under 23 games, and then what we can do is we can take the market from Pinnacle, the sharpest sportsbook in the world. So they have the over all the way at plus 130, the under all the way down at minus 159. Sportsbooks imply win probabilities for picks through their odds, right? That's how sportsbooks imply win probabilities, right? So you're using the sharpest sportsbook, their model, all the action they're seeing. Pinnacle is the sharpest, most efficient betting market for tennis. And we can see right here, this pick has a 58.54% win probability. So 58.54%, we're going to be winning Mcdonald under 23 games. And we only need to win at least 57.74% of the time, right? So this pick is incredibly, incredibly profitable, okay? So that's the first one that I'm rolling with in my PrizePicks entry. Now is where it starts to get more interesting, right? So there's no other positive EV picks on PrizePicks if you look at this tool. But what we can do is kind of manually search for discrepancies. So I'll give you a few examples. One is this Derek White, right? FanDuel is pricing as over 1.5. FanDuel's a much sharper, betting market than PrizePicks. They take a lot more action. They're a lot bigger. And BetOnline is definitely a lot sharper, than PrizePicks. One of the sharpest, sportsbooks in the world. Not as sharp as Pinnacle, but still. So that's one we can look at, right? That's one we can mathematically analyze, which we're about to do. And then here's another one. We have, where did I want? I wanted Klay. Here's another one, Klay Thompson, right? Here we can see over 3.5 rebounds is where all the sportsbooks are setting the line. PrizePicks at over 3, but is it good enough? Is our win probability going to be high enough to include into our PrizePicks entry? There were also some in player-made threes. So let's go to Curry very briefly. Well, here's the first one, Tatum, right? So PrizePicks setting the line at over under 3. Sportsbook setting it at 3.5. So this is a discrepancy, right? You definitely would want to go with over 3 if you're taking Tatum. You don't want to take the under, right? But how good is over 3 for Tatum? We're going to mathematically analyze that. And then finally, we have Curry, right? Curry's been on frickin' fire. PrizePicks is setting the line at 5. All the sportsbooks are setting it at 5.5. Is there any value there, right? These are the things that we need to know as a sports bettor. So we'll start out with Derek White. So this is pretty interesting. What I'm going to do, if we go in here, is I'm going to compare, right? FanDuel offers these alternate markets. We've explained it before, but FanDuel's the only sports book, at least in Arizona. I don't know if there's other sports books in other states that do this, but if you go to like player rebounds, right? They don't only give you a mainline market you can bet on with overs and unders, they give you an alternate rebound market, right? So you can bet on Smart over 1.5 rebounds if you want to. It's minus 1,200 odds, but you can bet on it, right? They offer over 6.5, under 6.5, all these different markets. So you can use these markets to back out what FanDuel is implying the distribution and win probabilities are for essentially the whole spectrum of a player's props, right? Which is really, really cool. So for example, Derek White, FanDuel is pricing his over 1.5 at minus 320, his under at plus 225. So if we put that into a zero vig odds calculator, we see that according to FanDuel, the model they have, once you remove the juice, remove the vig, remove the spread, whatever you want to call it, they're pricing Derek White over 1.5 rebounds at 71.23%. So let's go back here, 0.7123, right? This is the win probability estimate for White over 1.5 rebounds, okay? Now if I go back here to Derek White over 2.5, we can see BetOnline, which is a sharper sports book than FanDuel, or a very sharp, efficient betting market. We can see what they're pricing over under 2.5 at. So minus 130 plus 100. So BetOnline is pricing Derek White to go over 2.5 rebounds at 53.06%. So 53.06%. So essentially now we have, this is from FanDuel, the win probability estimate. Let me zoom in a bit, or let me make this text a little bigger. Let's go here. So the win probability for White over 1.5 rebounds is 71.23%. This is using a zero Vega odds calculator, the most important calculator any sportsbook uses. If you're betting on sports, you should be using this calculator every day. If you're using PrizePicks, you should be using this calculator on OddsJam every day. It's the most important calculator. Remove the juice, figure out what the sportsbook thinks the win probability is. So we now have the win probability for White over 1.5 rebounds and White over 2.5 rebounds, right? So essentially what we can do is say, okay, we have the win probabilities for over 1.5 and over 2. What's the win probability for White over 2, right? So we'll push if he gets exactly 2. But we know 1.5, we know 2.5, and where sportsbooks are setting their lines, what would it be if it was over under 2? So what we can do is just take an average of the 1.5 and 2.5 markets, and we can get an estimate of the win probability with the push included of White over 2 rebounds. And it's 62.145%, right? And again, you need to be winning your props on PrizePicks 57.73% of the time to break even, right? And we're getting for this White prop using sportsbook odds for over 1.5, that alternate market on PrizePicks. So if we go here, where is this bro? Over 1.5, right? Using the alternate markets, we're backing out the win probabilities using an OVIG odds calculator. So we can see, White over 2 is a 62.145% win probability, which beats this 57.74%. So the second pick I want to go with is going to be rebounds, and I want Derek White over 2. This is another great pick. Okay, so now we want to look at, first we can see if any new positive EV picks showed up, and it doesn't look like there's anything new on the tools on OddsJam. So unfortunately, we'll have to go through some other ones manually. But you can essentially do the same thing that we just did for Curry over 5, right? For Curry over 5 threes, you have the 4.5. You can get the win probability for that, and over 5.5. So long story short, what you essentially will see. So let's go to Klay Thompson, right? You can use this market for Klay to figure out the win probability for Klay over 3. So what we essentially are going to see is that Thompson, the win percentage is going to be 56.9%. So it would be profitable to include in a 4-leg entry on PrizePicks, but not a 2 or 3-leg entry based on the way PrizePicks works. For Tatum and Curry, it's 54%, so you don't want to use it, right? You wouldn't want to put it in. So all I'm doing is taking real-time odds from Pinnacle and then FanDuel's alternate markets for the alternate over 4.5 and the main line over 5.5 to try to estimate what's the probability of Curry over 5 threes, Tatum over 3 threes, right? And Thompson over 3 rebounds. So we can see the only one you really want to include is White over 2 rebounds, which is an absolute slam, right? So this is the best player prop entry on PrizePicks. A little bit of reverse engineering and kind of crazy math in the mix, but we're going to go ahead and lock it in. I'm going to play it a bit smaller because, again, like some of these markets that we're looking at, like this Derek White one, have some pretty crazy high market width, 95 cents here, and everything's an estimate. But you can definitely use OddsJam. This White one, you definitely want to roll with. This Mackenzie Mcdonald one is pretty low EV. I forget where it was, but Mcdonald under 23 games. But still, it's good. And, this PrizePicks entry is pretty good. So, but the math is a little less clear than when you just see a pick on the positive EV page, such as the ones this morning we had, like all 4 of these. All 4 of these were just on the positive EV page. They were all incredible. I freaking hate this Jason Alexander guy. Why couldn't he not give up 3 walks and 7 hits like a square? Whatever, can't win them all, but we'd been on a run, so it hates to see it end with a down day, but we'll be back at it with some NHL player props and stuff like that. So I hope you found this helpful. Let's make some frickin' money.